Would you mind crouching down in front? Yeah, we can't see behind you.
They can't see.
Thank you.
We're not like a racist group. The reason why he got paid with him is not even because of anybody else.
Can we show the other one? Show the one. Now I have to walk around. Mind you, my mother's 60-something years old. I have to walk around with seeing police officers that could have potentially hurt my mother. Something that no one would ever hurt my mother in front of me. And I have to walk around with these police officers that abuse my mother. And I have to be okay with that? Is that okay? Do you know how I feel watching this? This is anger inside of me. I'm so angry. I'm angry.
Let's go outside.
I'm angry.
No, let her talk.
No,
I'm angry.
we can't hear the
You
film.
getting yourself worked up. Go ahead, do what you gotta do. Let her talk. Let her talk.
We
need to get that out.
need some
They
people
need to
that's
hear
supposed to
that.
protect us.
They need to hear that.
Protect
They
us.
need to really feel that. Some of them just looking at her and they don't feel that.
They don't feel anything.
They don't have no heart.
Imagine watching somebody sitting there hurting your 60-something-year-old mother for nothing. Imagine. And I could do nothing about it because I knew if I even touched the police officer, they'd shoot me. I'd be saying I gotta go home to my child. Something gotta happen. And I gotta teach my son. He's a light police officer.
We're not like a racist group.
But that's what we're here to make That's what that looks like. We're human too. All of us here.
I just want to understand
Well,
what happened, what went wrong. We've seen somebody so civil, two people civil, with actually two groups being civil, and she gets attacked.
For no reason.
and this
And you
is,
clearly see it.
She's a perceived leader.
and this, in matter of fact, she's one of the ones, and I know that you can't talk about the case per se, but let's talk about the process of that. That individual, that's just per se, was engaging with the group and talking to the individual. And for some reason, one of the, I don't know which officer it was, but because they couldn't have enough to go up and say something like, well, Barb, come on, could I speak to you for a minute? Barb, come over here for a second. We just want to diffuse this right now. Instead, that they, because maybe they didn't know her, they didn't know the individual, they decided to take her and not really deal with the real situation that's going on. And I think that's the most troubling thing for the community, especially when an individual, let's not talk about Bob, but let's talk about, let's just hypothetically, when an individual is involved in the community as much as she is a voice as much as they are, why would they want to put her, well, put them in cuffs? We're talking about an activist. We're talking about somebody that they know.
Someone that does so much for this community.
Let's once again, I want y'all to understand that they cannot, because of the process and procedure of what they got to do, they can't talk about the person. So let's hypothetically right, but let's just let them answer that process of that when it's about an individual that does so much, and the PD knows who that person is. So what is that? Is that, I mean, is that necessary to arrest a person that is so engaged and so involved? Let's not talk about that clip, but if a person is engaged and so involved, and the PD know who they are, what is the leverage that they have? What's the latitude? Why? I mean, what is that? That is at that officer's discretion. What is that? Yeah.
How would she not comply?
Wait, let them.
It's the same thing but simpler. Is there probable cause to arrest community leaders present who are not breaking any other laws simply because they're community leaders and they're perceived to be that? Because that's what that arrest appears to be to most people who've seen that tape.
Well, let's hear what they. Let me hear what they.
Please answer that question.
Let me.
I could not answer that question.
You know,
Basically,
I know you,
you're
and I
asking
both
about
know.
the investigation. I can't answer that question.
Hypothetically, can you arrest a perceived activist leader at a demonstration who isn't breaking the law because that person's a perceived leader? We both know the answer is no, but I want to hear it from you guys. Hypothetically.
It's no hypothetical.
Wait, let them say. Let's see what.
Officers have a great deal of discretion. So a lot of what happens in general, in any situation, not this situation, hypothetical situations, officers are trained to make an arrest when you have probable cause. So that's what we train officers to do. One of the greatest things that I think about this entire thing, this entire event tonight, is not talking about the specifics of this case or any case in general. We're talking about relationships. We're talking about not the relationships that we just have with this community, but the perceived relationships. We're talking about race relations, even though it may not be spoken directly. We're talking about a lot of things that we're dealing with on a national level and dealing with right here in this community. What I see here is pain. I see people saying, I don't feel like I'm being treated equally. I don't feel like I was treated fairly. I don't feel like the officers themselves may be well. I don't feel like procedurally there are enough processes for checks and balances. That's why I came, because I see Barbara's pain. I see her daughter's pain. I see her daughter's pain. We want to address that. We want to make the situation better. It's not about saying, well, we're right, you're wrong, you're right, we're wrong. How can we, all of us, get through this and do it in a way that is better? so that situations that happen don't repeat themselves, so that we all don't have to take our energy to help people who are hurt because situations that maybe we, working together, can help avoid.
They have solutions that we want.
And that's what I want to hear. I want to hear, yes, we know some of the
Okay.
perceived problems, but what are some of the solutions that we can
One of the solutions I want to look at is looking at excessive force bill. How we can change that, because I read the bill, and to me, the police have so much latitude. I mean, I could just ask a question and they have a right to do whatever. The situation you've seen could have been worse, because there was another officer who just got promoted the day before, who actually gave the command to take me to the ground. So I don't know, it's just mind-boggling to me how any of this can be justified, how the mayor can come out and the next day, and all she talked about who had a permit and who didn't have a permit. No talk about the abuse that I've gone through. No word from the police department coming out apologizing, because first of all, it doesn't matter that whether I was doing anything or not. That's not even the case. It's just the amount of force that was used. And I think back to, and it's not the first time, so we're not going to talk about that. I really didn't want this to be about my case, because I know I'm not ready for that. I want to talk about back at the St. Patrick's Day parade when a 15-year-old was body slammed a couple of years ago, and police were fully exonerated. They saw nothing wrong with the force that they put on a 15-year-old cuffed girl. So it went from that to my daughter in July, that you can take her out of her seatbelt, push her window down with force. I wish I had that video. They think this was bad, to see that. And she's yelling and screaming, "What are you doing? What are you doing? Why?" And to see her boyfriend on the other side with a police officer standing by him, so he had to sit there and watch while they manhandled his girlfriend.
That's the worst part.
There's that was worse.
You can't even do nothing about it.
And then nothing was done in exoneration again. So now we have 2 more cases of brutality, which will probably end up exonerated again, because there's so much latitude what the police do. They could just do anything, and so we really need to look at internal affairs. How do we build any kind of trust in an organization that allows young girls and elders to be brutalized, and always found it was within their guidelines? So what are the guidelines? Are there any guidelines to where we say this is just wrong to be treating people? Do they have that?
Sure. It's through their training and through what the law allows an officer to do. Officers use force based on their training. The training that the state, the training that legislators have given us, saying this is what force you can use in this particular situation. Excessive force is defined as using force that is above what was needed and beyond what was needed for the situation. Exonerations come when it's determined that the force that was used, even though it looks brutal, and we don't deny that, taking someone down to the ground, pulling someone from a car, pepper spraying people.
When they're at the same time saying, "I'm not resisting."
It looks terrible. Almost any arrest looks terrible. And it feels terrible. It feels terrible not just for the individual being arrested, but sometimes for the officer who has to do it.
So that's why they come and apologize.
But
that's why I didn't want to be about me. I can't.
Well,
let's just take it somewhere else.
But let's. She brought up a point, and I think Robin and Mike can speak to that, talking about the
excessive force bill.
Excessive force
Since
bill.
the legislature gave them this
So
power.
when you go to speak, I just want to make a statement. This isn't a question, because I would like her to speak to as well as to what I'm about to say.
Come on, Gary.
Let's go, Gary.
So just to truly understand the seriousness of what we're facing, seeing our mothers, our young men, our children being handled a certain way, feeling like there's a systematic thing within the police departments, not only here in New Haven, but across the states everywhere. They talk about the blue code of silence, where you don't see other officers speaking against the officers that they may be with, seeing them doing these wrongs and injustices. So I'm saying that to say the seriousness of the situation is we have men in our communities who have looked themselves in the mirror and have checked themselves for the lack of not protecting our families, our children, our mothers, and our women in our communities. And we are set and serious about not letting anyone else die at the hands of officers or even our own people, our young people that run around with these guns and things like that. We are seriously prepared to protect our people in whatever aspect that may be. So we implore you to work with us and find a solution, because when we see our mothers crying, our children crying, we see us consistently dying at the hands of what we will call, I mean, it makes no sense. It's savageness. It really makes no sense. They come in our communities, which everybody knows and sees, and they just do what, I mean, this is the reality of what we live with. The officers do what they want, as if they don't have to answer to you or eternal affairs. And oftentimes we see, quickly, I'm sorry, y'all, oftentimes we see them be exonerated, as they're saying. And it's getting to that point, Chief, like seriously, we're not going to let nobody else put their hands on our women, on our mothers, on our sisters again, if they are not doing anything. So that needs to be brought across to these police officers, that we are in the neighborhoods and we're going to stand up.
And so we're going to have solutions. I really do want to be able to address that so that we can hold them responsible or accountable for what we feel are some of the things we want to see happening. And we're going to be accountable to make sure that we do our part too, because this can't continue on to happen. But I want to let Robin.
Good evening, everybody. It's real heavy in this room right now. I do have a bill. The bill didn't make it out of the House. We actually had a debate on the bill. It's House Bill 6663. It deals with excessive force. It deals with accountability, really. Because at the end of the day, that's what all of this boils down to. We've always had strained relations between cops and people of color in our communities. This is nothing new. It's just being unveiled now because we have access to cameras and iPhones, and we capture it now. My frustration has been that this is what I listen to, and then I have to go to the State House and decide what it is I can do to make this better. And it's always been my effort, my earnest effort, to bring everybody to the table. So I got a lot of pushback when I first brought the bill out, because I did bring out a strong bill. And the reason I did that is because if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have had the chief, the presidents of unions, and chief police association people coming to the Capitol to meet with me. So we sat and we talked about what was doable, what was fair, and what would help to bridge the gap between the people serving the communities, the police officers, and the community in which they serve. So a big piece of the problem when he says about legislation, I mean, my frustration, it goes through the chief police state attorney's office, Kevin Kane. State of Connecticut has yet to even allow one case to go to court. It never even makes it past the state attorney's office. So that's a frustration. So I'm working with them to try to figure out how do we combat that. But that's a struggle. Because when they come, and I'm not saying anyone specific, but when they come, it's always no. They don't even listen to what we have to say. Straight out the gate is no. So what I feel is what they feel when I go to represent them. That it's off hands, hold them harmless, let's not do anything. So my bill says that in 40 days, the chief state's attorney's office has to give us a preliminary status report. And it all started for me, this bill has been going since January. It picked up steam when Jason Negron was shot and killed in Bridgeport. That brought it back to life. And it was like, okay, enough is enough. Right now till today, that family still has no answers about what happened with that child. It's still under investigation, and as the chief said concerning your case, they can't talk about that. But I believe, and I know, that there are certain things that they can talk about. I'm not saying get into the details of it, don't compromise the investigation, but the community and the families deserve an answer. And that's how you keep people calm and at bay. You know, the protests and the marching, okay, fine, but we need answers. We need answers. And, you know, it also dealt, because he was in a motor vehicle, it deals with no shooting at motor vehicles. You know, we're seeing a lot of this. And there is an exception. We're not tying the officers' hands. If they feel like this person is about to run into a crowd, which seems to be really popular these days, you know, yes, you should stop that vehicle. But you do not need to shoot at the vehicle to disarm the vehicle, because if I have a gun, you're not shooting at my gun. You're shooting at me. And you're shooting to take me out. They are trained to shoot. Okay? Take you out. So if that's the case, then that's what they do if you're behind the wheel, which creates another problem. But we have to figure out what's the balance in that. So if there's a danger to the public, or if there's a danger to the officer, there's leeway in the bill where they can actually use force to stop that vehicle from harming other people or the officer involved. We dealt with complaint forms, that's a big issue, and making it standardized, because in the state of Connecticut, you go from one town or one city to the other, everybody has a different policy. So that's part of what we're trying to do as well at the State House, bring some standard policy to the entire state so that everybody's operating on a level field. And if you're not at home and you may be down in Bridgeport, you know what's going on, because they're all following the same rules. The same rules apply, just like with the instance you gave with the DUI. But I think that this is good, because my chief, our chief, came to the State House. He sat with me. Chief from Hamden, which is another part of my district, sat with me. They were in full support of the bill, even in its strongest form. Because initially I said, you know what, when these officers get charged with excessive force, forget about being suspended with pay. They need to be suspended without pay. Hold on, right? And, you know, people say, well, due process. Okay, so we put into the bill, we give them the due process, and if it comes back from the attorney's office that there's probable cause, then yes, at that point, it's without pay. And then we just had a video we saw today and yesterday, right in Hartford. I mean, I don't think it takes a rocket science to figure it out. If we have cameras, and we're getting body cams for New Haven, that's another part of the bill. 75,000 or more population, which will cover like Bridgeport, Waterbury, Hartford, New Haven, Danbury. It's like 7 cities that would be covered under that. We're mandating that they have body cams, and we're paying for it. The money's there. The money hasn't been drawn down. So that's another problem. But what's the use of having the body cams if we're going to watch the videos and then you're going to tell us what we're seeing is not what we're seeing? So we're working on that. At the end of the day, it's about accountability. You know, we keep talking about transparency, but for me, you can make it look however you want to make it look. I'm not concerned with transparency, because I see through all of this. I don't need transparency. I need accountability. And I also need a community that is holding themselves accountable. Because at the end of the day, you cannot demand from anyone what you are not willing to do for yourself. So we had a 14-year-old kid get shot and killed. No arrest, no conviction, no trial. Nothing's going on right now.
They're controlling traffic.
And everybody knows, well, I'm not saying everybody, but I'm sure there's quite a few people in the city that knows exactly who pulled that trigger. Where's the accountability with that? Where's the message that we're sending when it's permissible and allowable? We talk about the blue code. Let's talk about the snitching code too. And if I'm not down with you doing the crime, that don't constitute snitching. If I know who did it, I'm telling, because that's their job. And they can't do their job if we're not giving them the pertinent information in order for them to make these arrests and take these cancers out of our communities. Everybody can't be fixed. Everybody don't want to be fixed. And I'm all about second chances and rehabilitation if it works. But sometimes it doesn't work. And that's what we have prisons for. And we have to hold ourselves as community people, as citizens, as people in a village responsible. Because back in the day, the village didn't need the cops. We policed ourselves. And that's what we have to get back to. Because once we can get this under control, their job, the whole paradigm shifts. It's not the same job. And I'm not trying to let anybody off the hook, because we know, depending on what zip code you live in, you have public safety versus public siege. And what I see in my community right now is public siege. And we are working together. I don't stand here and say this lightly. We are working together. State legislators and the chief and everyone under his command to get this right, so that New Haven can be a community where we can all feel safe. Including police officers, because I mean, there's two sides to this story.
So what do we need to do to help you now? That's one solution to what you're saying, so that to help you do what you got to do. We have the community, so what do we need to do?
Can I
Well,
ask a question before, because you can hear at that same time? My question is, my question, which is part of the solution too, since legislators gave police the all this excessive power, whatever they have, can you legislators take that back? How do you go about taking some of that power back?
You should answer that, Gary. Really?
I'm sorry. Right now, no. You want to know why? The Police Chiefs Association, as Robin said, says no. A couple of years ago, I made national news by losing my cool a little bit with the Police Chiefs Association. The answer is no. And so I appreciate the fact that you sat down with Robin. I appreciate the fact that the Hamden Police Chief sat down with Robin. But when we bring the bill back, I want you to sit down in front of the legislature and tell them why that bill needs to pass.
That's right,
That's
Gary.
right. Yes.
Because that is 100%.
Let us
So-
know when
so-
you're doing that.
We will let you know, but the honest truth is, if somebody in uniform doesn't show up to say, we need to be doing this, you all can show up. You know this. You know it. You all can show up, and there's a reason why we can't do it. Look, the bill that Robin had, there's nothing wrong with that bill. We're not talking about most of the cops. Every cop knows that. But they know that they have power in that building. And so we need the cops who say that they're good cops, and I believe they're good cops. I got cops in the family, right? I believe that they're good cops. But they need to do more than talk about it. They need to actually show up and say something. They need to actually fight back against the garbage that is going on in their ranks.
That's right.
Because you cannot tell me that as a legislator, I can go year after year after year trying with these things. I told Robin when we started, I don't care what you do with that bill. It doesn't matter. If you take one scintilla of the power away from police, that bill will die in that building. Does anybody disagree with that, including you guys? No, right? Because this is how it works. So we have to be angry. We have to make this a moral conversation, but you got to show up. Not here in New Haven, because you're doing all right. You know, you got some problems, but you're doing all right. But you got to show up there, because that's where we take this back. And then some of your buddies across the Police Chiefs Association have to wake up. Because I don't know what the hell they're doing. I don't know what they're seeing, but there's a problem. And by the way, we have to stop saying the stuff we say about, well, they executed the move correctly.
Yeah.
Because the question is not whether they executed the move correctly. The question is whether the move should have been executed.
Right.
That's right.
So yes, they're going to get off. We know damn well the move should have never been executed.
Right.
And so when we ask the questions internally, can we ask different questions? If you need us to write some laws to help you do that, you tell me what law it is. I will write that. And then you come and help me to get that law passed. Because we've been asking the wrong question. That young lady should have never hit the ground.
That's right.
Say what you want to say. Some of us were there and some of us saw the video. She should have never hit the ground. Barbara shouldn't have been treated the way she was treated.
That's right.
We know that. It's not whether the procedure was followed within the bounds of the procedure. It's whether the procedure should have been used at all. And so in our community, it is what Robin said. It is about siege. It is about me sitting on my porch at the corner of Winchester and Division and watching a cop and hopping in my car to go find out where the cop went after they turned that light on and didn't go anywhere because they didn't want to sit at the light. And then you're supposed to respect the authority that they have.
That's right.
You can't respect that authority.
And then they get off their cell phone and pull me over for being on my cell phone.
Thank you.
The cell phone's a little. I get
No,
that
no,
the cell,
I'm just saying.
but I'm just saying. But I'm saying.
What
But I'm saying
does,
it makes
what's wrong for one is wrong for all. That's
everything
all
makes
I'm
it
saying.
more difficult.
And what it really does is eventually you get a powder keg, and then you become less safe. So none of us are safe. I can't talk to you because I don't trust you. You can't talk to me because you're scared to talk to me. So look, at the end of the day, we're going to be fighting whether you show up or not. But if I'm going to be out here in this community and I'm going to be a voice in this community, what I need in order for me to say that you guys are 100% on board is for you to be 100% on board.
Now, again, that goes. Yeah.